He was still grinding into her like tonight was his night, but that ended as soon as my fist connected with the side of his face while his tool was still in the backyard. I felt every bone in my knuckles crunch against his jaw with a satisfying crack. But let's start from the beginning, right after your subscription to this channel. I stood at the altar, my heart racing with anticipation as I watched Jessica glide down the aisle, her white dress shimmer in the afternoon sun, making her look like an angel descending from heaven. As she reached me, I couldn't help but marvel at how lucky I was. "You look absolutely breathtaking," I whispered, taking her hands in mine. Jessica's green eyes sparkled as she replied, "You clean up pretty well, yourself handsome." The ceremony flew by in a blur of emotions and promises. Before I knew it, we were sharing our first kiss as husband and wife, the crowd erupting in cheers and applause. As we made our way to the reception, I couldn't wipe the smile off my face. The venue was perfect, decorated with elegant floral arrangements and soft lighting. Jessica and I made our rounds, greeting guests and accepting congratulations. "Congrats, man." Cole's voice boomed as he approached, clapping me on the back. "You two make quite." The pair thanks Cole. I grinned, pulling him into a quick hug. Couldn't have done it without my best man. The night progressed, filled with laughter, dancing, and endless toasts. But as the hours ticked by, I started to notice something off. Jessica kept disappearing for longer stretches of time, leaving me to mingle with guests alone. "Hey, have you seen Jessica?" I asked my sister during one of these absences. She shrugged. "I think I saw her heading towards the bathroom earlier." I nodded, trying to brush off the growing unease in my stomach. When Jessica returned, I pulled her close. "Everything okay? You've been gone a while," I murmured into her ear. She laughed lightly. "Oh, you know how it is, long dress, lots of buttons. Plus I needed to touch up my makeup." I wanted to believe her, but something felt off as the night wore on. The nagging feeling only intensified. Jessica's absences became more frequent, and I noticed Cole seemed to be missing during those times too. "Hey man, where's the blushing bride?" one of my college buddies asked, jolting me from my thoughts. I forced a smile. "Oh, women probably fixing her hair or something." But the knot in my stomach tightened. I scanned the room, looking for any sign of Jessica or Cole. The dance floor was packed, the bar was bustling, but neither of them were anywhere to be seen. I excused myself from the group, my feet carrying me towards the quieter areas of the venue. The hallway felt like a different universe, cold, empty, a far cry from the noise and celebration downstairs. My feet tapped along the floor, each step feeling heavier, like my body knew something terrible was waiting just ahead. My pulse kept rising, my skin buzzing with something between panic and fury. I could hear the muffled sounds of music and laughter fading behind me, leaving me alone with my thoughts in that vacuum of silence. I wasn't ready for this. I wasn't ready for anything. That wasn't the perfect life I'd mapped out for both of us. But each step pulled me closer to the bridal suite, that stupid door, heavy and polished like it belonged in some fancy hotel hallway. But right now it looked like a damn wall between who I was minutes ago and whatever bastard I was about to become. I could feel my blood pounding in my ears as my hand wrapped around the handle, holding tight, hesitating for just a breath. 1 inch. That's all it took. The door cracked open just enough for me to see. Then my stomach dropped. I clenched my jaw so hard I thought I'd break my teeth there. She was Jessica, my wife, go-to-wife, bent over on the bed. Her dress pushed up carelessly around her waist like it didn't matter like this. Didn't matter. And Cole, ducking, Cole shirtless, gripping her hips like he had more right to touch her than I ever did. The noises. The raw ducking sound of them together drowned everything else out. My legs felt like stone, frozen for a moment in place. My fists curled into themselves, knuckles cracking under the weight of holding it in. I wanted to tear the entire room apart. They didn't know they didn't hear me. Jessica's face was buried in the pillows, lost in her betrayal. Cole, his eyes were squeezed shut, his head thrown back like some cheap adult movie. Duck them both. My feet moved before I even realized it. I wasn't quiet, but they were too deep in themselves to notice me too, wrapped in their disgusting moment. I came up right behind Cole in 3 quick steps. He was still grinding into her like tonight was his night, but that ended as soon as my fist connected with the side of his face while his tool was still in the backyard. I felt every bone in my knuckles crunch against his jaw with a satisfying crack. He didn't even have time to scream, his body twisting from the force, tearing him out of Jessica and sending him crashing to the floor. He groaned, rolling over his lips, split wide open, blood pouring from his mouth. He scrambled up, dazed, confused, like he didn't even understand what just hit him. He swore under his breath, struggling to get his bearings. Jessica shot up her eyes wide and tried scrambling for something to cover herself, but the dress was a tangled mess. She couldn't even speak. Her mouth just hung open like the words got stuck somewhere deep in her throat. Her chest was heaving, her breath coming out in these sharp, panicked gasps. I didn't care. I couldn't care. Cole began to push himself up on unsteady legs, his hands grabbing the edge of the bed for support. His eyes darted between me and Jessica. The dumb shock all over his face drained into something that almost looked like fear. He opened his mouth to speak, blood dripping onto his chest. Eric, man, but I punched him again. He lands on the floor again. Jessica's scream echoes in my ears, tearing at the thin fabric of my sanity. My heart pounds like a war drum as I storm into the bridal suite. Jessica's wide emerald eyes are frantic, darting between me and Cole. Her sleek wedding dress is wrinkled askew. She clutches at it, trying to hide what's already painfully exposed panic courses through her trembling body. Eric, please. She barely gets out her voice, shaky Cole, that bastard groans. As he attempts to get up, my blood boils hotter. Seeing his smug face bruised and dazed, I reach him in 2 furious strides, grabbing his collar. His eyes dart around in fear, but I don't give a damn. The fury within me has taken over all calm and composure. I pride myself, ozone. Eric, man, just listen. Cole's attempt to speak only fuels my rage more. My fist crashes into his stomach with unbridled force. He gasps, folding over in pain, collapsing to his knees. I can't stop. Blistering fury drives my punches each blow, landing with a sickening solid crack. His face becomes an unrecognizable mess as I keep hitting him, blood streaming down from his nose and mouth. Jessica's sobs mix with the dull thus of my fists on Cole's flesh, but her cries are distant. Meaningless, she tries to approach me, her words lost in her frantic sobbing. Nothing in her voice, nothing in her touch can pierce the veil of betrayal, cloaking my heart. I slammed Cole against the dresser, his body limp, barely conscious. My knuckles are raw and bleeding, but I feel nothing. No pain, no remorse. Just a cold void where my trust and love for these two once lived. Cole's head crashes into the wall with a sickening thud, blood splattering the pale drywall. Jessica crawls off the bed, inching closer, her sobs turning into desperate whispers. Eric, please stop. We can talk about this. I shove her away each time she gets near, her touch, revolting, her presence infuriating, everything she was. Everything I knew is ash in the wind now. Don't touch me. My words are clipped, venomous. Cole's broken form makes an attempt to speak, his voice slurred, feeble. Eric, I'm sorry, man, sorry, I growl, leaning down closer to his mangled face. You think sorry fixes this? There's no forgiveness in my heart, no room for anything but the cold, hollow emptiness choking my ability to think straight. My hands tremble as the adrenaline begins to wane, leaving behind a shaking fury and a void that feels like it might swallow me whole. I look at Cole's wrecked, bloodied face and Jessica's crumpled form on the floor, sobbing into her gown. All the love, the trust I've built with these supposed pillars of my life crumbles into nothing. There's no satisfaction in the violence, no righteous triumph, just this relentless, consuming void. Get out. I hiss, my voice unrecognizable to my own ears. I can't bear to look at either of them any longer. They've turned what should have been the happiest night of my life into a hell. I can't escape. Jessica's sobs grow louder, but she heeds my command, crawling painfully towards the doorway, her once pristine gown dragging behind her like the ghost of our ruined love. Cole tries to get to his feet but collapses, weak and pathetic. I don't help him. Let him feel this. Let him remember forever. I stood there, my chest heaving, fists clenched at my sides. The room was spinning, but not from alcohol. No, this was pure, unadulterated rage. I turned away from Cole's crumpled form on the floor, deliberately avoiding Jessica's tear-streaked face. I couldn't bear to look at either of them. Right now, without a word. I stormed out of the bridal suite, slamming the door behind me. The sound echoed through the empty hallway, a stark contrast to the muffled music and laughter coming from downstairs. My wedding, what a fucking joke. I paused at the top of the grand staircase, my hand gripping the banister so tightly, my knuckles turned white. The cheerful voices of our guests floated up, oblivious to the devastation that had just occurred. For a moment, I considered just walking out, disappearing into the night, and leaving this nightmare behind. But no, that wasn't me. I'd worked too hard, sacrificed too much to let them get away with this. They didn't get to destroy everything and walk away unscathed. I descended the stairs, each step feeling heavier than the last. As I reached the bottom, the sounds of the reception hit me full force. The DJ was playing some upbeat pop song, and I could see people dancing, laughing, enjoying themselves. It was surreal, like I'd stepped into some parallel universe where everything was fine. I scanned the room, my eyes landing on a table with several unopened bottles of champagne. Without hesitation, I strode over and grabbed one by the neck. Its weight felt good in my hand, solid and real. I made my way to the center of the dance floor, pushing past confused guests. Some tried to stop me, ask what was wrong, but I ignored them all. I had only one goal now, standing there in the middle of my own wedding reception. I lifted the bottle high above my head. Time seemed to slow down as I brought it, crashing down onto the hardwood floor. The shattering of glass was deafening, silencing the entire room in an instant. All eyes were on me now. Good. Let them all see what a joke this whole thing was. Listen up, everyone, I said, my voice low, but carrying easily in the sudden silence. I've got an announcement to make. I could see confusion and concern on the faces around me, my parents, Jessica's family, our friends. They all stared at me waiting the bride. I spat the word out like it was poison, decided to duck the best man in our bridal suite while you were all down here celebrating our love. The gasps were audible. I saw shock, disbelief, and horror ripple through the crowd. Some people laughed nervously, clearly thinking this was some kind of twisted joke. Eric. Man, what are you talking about? Someone called out. I think it was Jessica's brother, but I couldn't be sure you heard me, I replied, my voice growing louder. Your sister, my wife. Of what 4 hours couldn't even make it through our wedding day without spreading her legs for my best friend. More gasps. Some women were crying. Now I saw my mother's face pale with shock, my father's arm around her shoulders. Where's Jessica? Someone else demanded. This can't be true. I laughed, a harsh, bitter sound that didn't even sound like me anymore. Oh, it's true, all right. She's probably still up there, helping Cole pick up his teeth from the floor. The murmurs grew louder. I could see people looking towards the stairs as if expecting Jessica and Cole to appear and deny everything. Eric's son, my father's voice steady and calm as always. Maybe we should talk about this in private. I turned to face him, seeing the concern in his eyes for a moment. I almost faltered, but then the image of Jessica and Cole flashed through my mind again, and the anger surged back. No dad, no more privacy, no more secrets. They don't get to hide this. I turned back to the crowd, raising my voice even more. The wedding's over, folks' party's done. You can all go home now, sorry for the inconvenience, but hey, at least you got some free booze and food out of it. Right with that. I started walking towards the exit. People moved out of my way, creating a path through the stunned crowd. I could hear the whispers, see the pitting looks, but I didn't care anymore. As I reached the doors, I heard a familiar voice calling my name, Jessica. I didn't turn around, didn't stop. I pushed through the doors and stepped out into the cool night air, leaving behind the wreckage of what should have been the happiest day of my life. I slammed the car door shut, the sound echoing through the empty parking garage. My hands were shaking as I gripped the steering wheel, knuckles still raw from the fight. The events of the night played on loop in my mind, the wedding, the betrayal, the violence. It all felt like a sick joke. I drove home in a daze, barely registering the familiar streets passing by. When I finally stumbled into my apartment, the silence hit me like a physical force. Just this morning I had left here full of hope and excitement for the future. Now that future lay in ruins. My body finally gave out and I collapsed onto the couch. Every muscle ached, my head pounding from the adrenaline crash. I closed my eyes, but all I could see was Jessica and Cole together. The image made me want to vomit. My phone buzzed incessantly, probably worried family and friends, reaching out. I ignored it. There was only one thing I needed to do now. With trembling hands, I opened my laptop. The brightness of the screen made me wince. In the dark room, I typed divorce attorney into the search bar, my fingers moving on autopilot. As the results loaded, a cold determination settled in my chest. This was it, the end of everything. I thought my life would be. The next few days passed in a blur. I barely ate, barely slept. Jessica's attempts to contact me grew more and more desperate. Her name on my phone made my stomach turn. Each time I couldn't bring myself to read a single message or listen to a single voicemail. What could she possibly say to justify what she'd done? On the third day, A knock at my door startled me. For my daze, I peered through the peephole to see Jessica standing there, her face streaked with tears. "Eric, please." She begged through the door. "We need to talk, let me explain." I slammed the door shut. Before she could finish, the sound of her sobs faded. As she walked away, I leaned against the door. My heart-racing part of me wanted to hear her out to understand why she'd thrown everything away, but I knew it wouldn't change anything. The trust was broken beyond repair. I threw myself into the divorce proceedings, letting the legal jargon and paperwork consume my thoughts. It was easier than dealing with the emotions, threatening to overwhelm me. My lawyer, a no-nonsense woman named Sarah, guided me through the process, efficiently. Given the circumstances, she explained during our first meeting, we should be able to push this through relatively quickly. The infidelity gives us a strong case. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. The word infidelity felt like a punch to the gut every time I heard it. Weeks passed. I ignored calls from friends, avoided social media, and threw myself into work. The routine helped, giving me something to focus on besides the gaping hole in my chest. Finally, the day of the divorce finalization arrived. I stood outside the lawyer's office, steeling myself for what was to come. Sarah greeted me with a sympathetic smile. "Are you ready?" she asked. I took a deep breath, as I'll ever be. Jessica was already inside. When we entered, she looked small, hunched over in her chair. Her once vibrant blonde hair hung limp around her face. When she looked up at me, her green eyes were dull and red-rimmed. "Eric," she whispered, her voice cracking. I didn't respond, taking my seat across from her without meeting her gaze. Sarah placed the papers in front of us, explaining the terms one last time. I barely heard her, focused on keeping my breathing steady. "If you're both in agreement," Sarah concluded, "you can go ahead and sign." Jessica's hand trembled as she picked up the pen. She hesitated, looking at me, pleading, "Eric, please, can we just sign the papers?" "Jessica," I said, my voice cold and flat. A tear slid down her cheek as she scrawled her signature. Then it was my turn. I signed my name, the finality of it settling over me like a weight. With that, our marriage was over. I stood up immediately, gathering my things. Jessica remained seated, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs. For a moment, I almost reached out to comfort her, but the memory of her betrayal stopped me cold. Without a word, I walked out of the office, leaving Jessica alone with the wreckage of our relationship. As I stepped into the sunlight, I felt empty. The anger that had sustained me these past weeks had burnt out, leaving nothing but a hollow ache in its wake. I got into my car, unsure of where to go or what to do next. The life I had planned, the future I had imagined, it was all gone. Now I had to figure out who I was without it. Hey everyone, if you found this story gripping and want to hear more like this one, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more jaw-dropping tales every week. Don't forget to turn on notifications so you never miss an update. If you have your own wild stories to share or ideas you'd like us to bring to life, drop them in the comments. I'd love to hear them. Thanks for watching, thanks for watching, thanks for watching.